Hello, this is Kerbal King here, and welcome back to How Not to Kill Kerbals. In this episode, we're going to launch our first orbital mission. So I've named the rocket to Space and Back, and I'm going to go over the basic construction of it. So what we have is the launch clamps, of course holding it down, winglets for control, and then the skipper, which is a nice light first stage engine or heavy upper stage engine. Fuel tank, which is pretty cool because I can either make it orange or white. I like the orange because it looks a little bit better. The coupler, and then a poodle engine, which is a really good upper stage engine. And then this is sort of acting also like the service module, so we have some solar panels and the antenna, tank, another coupler, and a heat shield, which is good for protecting the craft during re-entry, and a parachute. And then we have upgraded to the 3-person command module. Another cool thing you can do is action groups. So if you click up here on the actions menu, we have custom action groups. So if I hit the number 1 key, the solar panels deploy, and the number 2 key deploys the antenna. So let's launch. So here we are on the launch pad. In Kerbal Engineer, I've pulled up the orbital and vessel information. So that will give us more information on the flight, turning on SAS and throttling up, and we can launch. We're going to fly up until we get about 100 meters per second worth of velocity, and then we're going to start doing our gravity turn, which is a turn east to get us into orbit. Because as you get into orbit, you can't just go up, you also have to go horizontal. As you can see, I'm using the D key to start pitching over. Do a fairly aggressive pitch. And then once you've kind of gotten up to where the prograde vector is starting to go towards the horizon, you can just tilt the point directly prograde and it would follow that. We're going to aim for an apoapsis of 80 kilometers, so that has room to get above the atmosphere. You can also help it by pushing D to try to get it to go even further east or down on the horizon. So that fuel's run out. We can separate and go to the second stage, which basically has a more vacuum optimized engine, and you're not carting around the empty fuel tank mass, so that helps. And we can go a little bit higher than 80, we can go to 100. It also just makes it easier to do a circularization before you fall back into the atmosphere. So what we can do now is make a maneuver node. You don't strictly have to do this, but it is helpful. Basically, it will say what will happen if you burn in a certain direction with a certain amount of velocity at a certain time. So it's basically saying it's going to be the plan will get us into a fairly circular orbit, and it says we have to do 1500 meters per second in this direction at this time. So we can just tell the maneuver node to point, or SAS to point at the maneuver node. And down here we have the estimated burn time and the time until the node, because it assumes that you apply all the velocity at once, which you can't do because that's, well, I mean, you could if you had a really high thrust engine, but we don't. So you want to split the burn halfway between each one, so you start half the time before the node, so the middle of the burn is at the node. So this is a minute and 24 seconds. We're gonna want to go at like 50 or so seconds. That also gives us a little bit of time to throttle down at the end to get a more precise burn. You also, if you hit C, can go into a cockpit view. It's not super helpful, but it's cool to get a different view. Then you can hit V to go amongst the different seats. So you notice this is a 3-person cockpit. You also have windows which you can look out of, which is pretty cool. And then yeah, you just right click and drag to look around. It's not super helpful, but it's kind of interesting to just hit C and then to go out of it. You also can hit M to look at your map. So yeah, we're almost in orbit. And we should have a lot of fuel left, but it's always good to have a little bit of extra, especially when you're learning. So we can hit the control key to throttle down as we approach orbit, and then as it gets closer, you can keep throttling down to make it more precise. On a orbital insertion burn, that isn't super necessary to be really precise, but it is more helpful if you're like approaching a planet from super far away. It does help to be very precise. Now, with the 1 key that we set up, we can deploy the solar panels, which will recharge our batteries. We have 150 units of electric charge, and there's not much on this craft that's actually using power, so we probably didn't even need solar panels. If you want to stay up here super short, but if we want to stay up here for a while, you don't want solar panels. And also, we can, to get a better view of it, use the E and Q keys to rotate the craft, and then hit 2, which I set up, to deploy the antenna, which also you don't need because the capsule has its own integrated antenna, which is good enough for low curb in orbit, but you have to put antennas on if you go really far. So some of the controls is W and S do yaw, A and D control pitch, and then E and Q do roll, and that's for orientation. And then also if we turn on our RCS, which is not super balanced, but there's some RCS built into the capsule, I and J are like sideways. I mean, I and K go like back and forth, so do J and L. And also if you have jets that are facing like forward and backwards, H and N would go forward and backwards, but we'll cover that again in a later video when we talk about docking. So here, another thing that you can do is you hit the EVA button, you can go out on spacewalk. So you can hit space to let go, and then R. You also have your RCS jets. So again, in this mode, it's a little bit confusing because the translation keys are the translation keys have to do with W, A, S, and D, and then E and Q do the rotation, so it's a little bit different. Another thing that's helpful, if you right click or if you double click on your target, you can go into target, you can set it as your target, so now your target velocity is your relative velocity between the two things. So right now I'm going 9 meters per second difference than this thing. So if I go to like a 0 meter per second relative velocity, or the smaller I go, the closer I just kind of drift. And again, W and S go forwards, and A and D go sideways. And then it's weird, if I look this way, it then changes it. And then also another thing, shift and control go up and down, basically. So here we can come in and approach the craft to try to get back into it, which is always good. And then you can see the hatch is up on the top. So you kind of have to go around to fly around. And you'll notice that the Kerbals also have a parachute, which they can use when they're in atmospheres. I don't know why they're carrying it now. That's kind of funky. Oops. Another thing you'll notice is that these things do break. So if I like stupidly decide to slash into it, it will break. This is probably not a good thing. And I'm flying away from it now. It helps if you try to make your relative velocity slow before you try to do a lot of things. And you'll notice they also have EVA propellant, so they have that amount of fuel to use. It is automatically refilled when you go into a capsule, but you don't want to run out of this, especially if you're in space, because it's sort of hard to get into your capsule if you don't have any jets and you're not holding on to anything. Another thing you can do is kind of, some objects are grabbable, so if you want to, you can, if you get close to them, like the, yeah, it's sort of hard to control. If you hit F, you can just grab, and then B will board. So yeah, as you'll notice, we now have a busted solar panel, so it's not going to give us any power, but it's not a big deal. If we want to orbit around multiple times for some reason, you can, using time warp, but you can't go faster than 50x because we're too low. Say we want to, but also say we want to go higher. To raise your orbit, you go prograde. So right now we're burning prograde, and that's making our orbit go higher. So we can do that if we want. We also then can, if we time warp, we can go faster as we get up higher. So yeah. Another cool thing you can do is, it's easiest to deorbit if we're at apoapsis. So we can, if we want to create another maneuver, and also if you right click on something, it locks it up there. So now you can see, it's sort of hard to see, but our periapsis is our current periapsis, and this is what our planned periapsis is going to be. Will be at 60 kilometers, but we can also change it to be like 36-ish. That's a fairly good periapsis for re-entering. You can just warp up here. Oops, didn't totally hit it, but it doesn't really matter. You can use it to do it a little bit more precisely. But yeah, you'll see now where our thing is 36 kilometers. We can warp down, and you'll see the marker shows up. This is the KSC. If we go into regular view, we can also hit spacebar to decouple the thing. And there's two primary ways to move or turn in space. You either have the RCS jets, which you have the RCS jets, which can be used. You also have, you see right now that they're not firing, but we're still moving. That's because there's a reaction wheel in the pod, which I can also toggle torque and turn off. So now if I want to move, surprisingly, I don't know why it's not. Okay, so it's deciding to use the, apparently I can only do, I don't know, apparently I can only control roll with the jets. It's interesting. So I can turn the torque back on. So compared to real life reaction wheels, KSP reaction wheels are really overpowered. In real life they take like hours to turn something like this. So a lot of craft don't even have reaction wheels, but in KSP they're a little bit overpowered, but they do make it a lot easier. You can see we're just time warping down, and we're going to slow down before we hit re-entry, and it uses some of the jets to reorient itself, but mainly the reaction wheel. Then here we are in the atmosphere. You want to enter a heat shield first, or a retrograde, which is against your direction of travel. You have 800 units of a blader, which is basically stuff that will burn off to keep this from burning off, but sometimes you don't always need a full heat shield, so you can decrease it if you want to, but I didn't for this demonstration. Generally, you can probably time warp the entire way down But I normally like stop time warping after it starts getting heated because it's could be more prone to random explosions when you're time warping and having force involved. Generally, it doesn't matter as much on a craft that's really small. Like this one's only 3 parts, so it doesn't matter as much. You'll also notice that up here it says no single signal because I have plasma blackout turned on. So right now all the heat is causing ionizing plasma to mess up the radio communication. So in real life there's no communication from the capsule to the ground right now. Another thing we can do is, this is the minimum pressure where it will pre-deploy. So if I stage it now, it's not doing anything, but you'll see it turns blue, so that's armed. So that's when it will pre-deploy. And the altitude is 1,000. Sometimes that's a little bit high, so you can tone that down if you want. So you're not sitting around and having it basically waiting for it to fall for as long. So yeah, you can see here. You can probably time warp it a little bit until we get through most of the re-entry, because it doesn't look like it'll have much of an issue on a craft that's really small like this. Yeah, we drop out of time warp and wait until the chute deploys. And there we go, the parachute has deployed. And it's going to be slowing us down partially because it's not fully expanded yet. And it will fully expand at 700 meters because that's what we determined it to. You can warp here. I also normally turn off SAS and RCS when I'm here. And I'm going to slow it down before we get full parachute deployment. Have the bun right there, which is pretty nice. And then all these other stars and stuff are just like dots on the skybox. They're not actual things. And as you can see here, the parachute is deploying, and we can fall right down into the ocean. Another feature of heat shields is you can jettison them to have not be as heavy when you land. But yeah, unless you have mods, all these dots don't actually correspond to anything. But yeah, so the only real thing we have is the mud. So yeah, here we are, just splashing down into the water. And there we are, a successful mission. With that, I'd like to say thank you for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, and have a nice day.